John Wolfstall.
Anytime that there are reports that there's a nuclear power plant that either comes under attack or there's a fire at a nuclear power plant, people are right to be concerned. This is a war zone, and the fact that Russian troops would fire and attack at the plant is something that I think should give everybody real sense of danger.
We're getting Reverend Browning up.
Russia's attack on Ukraine is now in its second
Reverend
week.
Dr. Browning.
He's here.
Okay.
Good morning.
Please bring him in.
Good morning.
Reverend Dr. Browning, how are you?
In Poland for a
I am doing blessed. How are you doing today?
I am so much
Illinois resident Juliana Lysachenko.
Wonderful.
You're not
Wonderful.
even
How are you doing?
tell you. I am so much better, but I am going to get some rest when we get off the air. And, you know, going to do the things that I need to do, but I'm going to do a quick pivot. Well, I'll be coming to you probably about 6:09, 7:09 your time.
As COVID
So that I can
cases
give you
decline,
until
demand for the vaccine
15 after
is
the hour. I want to give you
collapsing.
your full 5
EAP's
minutes
Jennifer King.
so that
Right
you
now,
can say what
roughly
you need to
60%
say.
of all Americans are fully vaccinated.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, no,
Have
no,
received
thank
at
you.
least
I
one
just,
shot.
there's so
Public
many
health
headlines.
say they are shuffling doses around to try and find
There's
providers
so
that
much
will use
to
them.
say.
From Michigan
And
to North
there
Carolina,
just comes
state
a point when
officials
you're
are
like,
telling
well,
the
I
Associated
can't say
Press
anymore.
that millions of doses have already gone
Wow.
to waste. The
Anything new
Services says
since last night?
No, you know, except for this, the attack on the nuclear
gathering and transporting the shots
power
Right.
plant.
Conditions. Jennifer King, Washington.
You know, but
This
I
is
think one of the
AP
stories
News.
that's not gone reported. Hey, Samantha and Linda and Maddie and Lila and Donnie, how you doing, sweetie? What's really gone unreported? This alliance between the Chinese and the Russians that was cemented at the Olympics. And I just think it's for us to think that the Russians are in this by themselves. You know, this is Eurasia. We forget that. You know that
Wow.
they share that Russia is Western and European on one side and they're Chinese on the other. Those are their borders. Russia is a landlocked country. And so, you know, it's not making excuses. It's just you have to look at when people talk about realpolitik or real politics. Yeah, look
The
at
Dow
that.
lost 96 points
You got to look at
yesterday.
what people
The
are
S&P
really
fell
looking at
23.
and what we're
The
really
Nasdaq
looking
fell
at.
216.
Now China is telling us we want your nukes out of South Korea. This is a lot bigger than the American media. And I'm going to talk about it next week.
We are sure. Okay.
You know, it's just, this is like, this is big. You know, this was something I've just talked to people about it. This is not as simple as 1, 2, 3, and you snap your fingers. I mean, because now you're beginning to see when people, they've tried to poo-poo the story about the neo-Nazis there. And you see what's happened to that.
Well, traffic
Mhm.
Eisenhower
You know,
itself. It's
I'll talk about that next week.
390 to downtown Chicago. Outbound,
You know.
however, traffic is slow from 5th Avenue to
Like,
25th.
there's a lot
Vision
going on here.
Shoulders
You
are
know?
blocked with the vehicle.
There's just a
And the
lot.
other has gotten hardly any attention because of all
3
this.
minutes from the Veterans Memorial to Sabo Lake
Yeah,
Shore
none of
Drive.
that's gotten any
5 o'clock
attention. It
and
hasn't gotten
15
the
minutes,
adequate
9 minutes
attention.
downtown.
Because they're
Solo,
stuck.
120
They have
is
been
blocked at
stuck.
60.
Now,
I'm
because the
Alamo.
world has started to discuss it, thankfully.
Leaves and
Now
auto
they're
bookings
being,
pile up for race
now
motor
they
cleaning
are
service.
working with a quickness to
He
rectify
needs help
that.
before his bottom
But that
line
did
gets
happen.
clogged.
What about Cristiano?
You know,
They got 6 houses
that
to
anti-black
Indeed can help
racism
hire
is
great
there.
people fast.
I need it.
And doesn't mean look, I love
Instant Match
America.
instantly
Anti-black
connects you with
racism is
quality
here.
candidates
Doesn't mean
whose
I'm
resumes
anti
and
anything.
Indeed
Doesn't
match
mean
your
that
sponsored job
I still
description.
think that what's
Visit
happened over there, no country should
Indeed.com/credit
be
and get
invaded and all of that.
$75 towards your first
You must
sponsored
deal
job.
with
Terms
the
and conditions
illnesses that are
apply.
in your country.
Tom
Why
Huffman,
are
what
the
is
black
the
folks in
positive message
Ukraine?
the
Well,
Republicans are
black
bringing
people are in
Americans this
Europe
year?
because
McConnell
Europe
replied,
has been built on the
"Republicans
backs
should
of
be
black
100%
people.
focused on Democrats."
1 minute.
What terrible things
You
to
know,
do into
I
this
mean,
country. And then when he was
if you don't
asked,
want me
well,
there, then
why
you
don't
don't need to
tell us
come to
at least what
Africa
you're going to do?
and
And
take
McConnell
people
said
and
words to the effect
resources.
of, well, when we get power again, we'll let you
You know,
know.
look, in for a
Right.
penny, in
The
for a
Tom
pound.
Hartman
That's
radio
what I tell
program.
people who say, you know,
Weekdays,
why
11
did, you know,
a.m.
my
to 2
family
p.m.
immigrated
on
here. I had nothing to do with this.
WCPT
No,
820,
sweetie.
where facts
We
matter.
built this
Finding
country.
great candidates to hire
So
can be like, well,
you
trying
benefited
to
from
find
it,
a
so
needle in a
you're in it.
haystack.
but not with ZipRecruiter.
Wow.
It's powerful
It's
technology.
just, it's real simple.
And invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So
You know,
while other companies might
have to
deliver a
let
lot of
people
hay,
know,
ZipRecruiter finds you the
what
needle
the
in the
deal is
haystack.
here.
See why
But I do
4 out
want to
of
talk
5
about
employers
what's
who post a
happening,
job on
because that's a
ZipRecruiter get
big
quality
deal. And
candidate with
you would
no
really
fee.
feel it being
Try
in DC.
ZipRecruiter for free at
You know,
ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
because that's where you see
Really,
everything.
because
I never
facts
realized how
matter.
much of
You're
everything you
listening.
see. Please,
5
my
seconds.
sister said you can have
20.
someone flagging down the bus, leading the coup the next day.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. I think I should be saying that to myself. I'm so glad to be back with you. Oh, I had so much to take care of. Had a little self-care, got a little rundown, and I had to, just do what we've not been doing over the past couple of years, take medical tests and things like that. So please, everybody, take care of yourselves. There's nothing that can make up for lack of sleep. And the days of me getting 2.5, 3 hours of sleep a night are done. I just want you to know that. But I'm still going to work hard for you every day on the Santita Jackson Show. I love you, everybody. It's a joy to be with you today. We're going to be talking about Ukraine, of course. What is going on there? What's going on there? And what's going on around the world? We have invasions all over the world in Yemen and Ethiopia. But we never talk about those. We certainly do not give them the weight that we're giving Ukraine. I'm not saying that you should take your eyes off of Ukraine, but I think that you should share that view. You've got refugees, you have the same thing that's happening in Ukraine that's happening all around the world. Why is that not happening? And why are the media not reporting all of these invasions with equal weight? And then Breonna Taylor. Well, the police officer who killed her said, well, she didn't have to die, but she did. So why was he acquitted? I mean, the neighbors said the bullets barely missed me. We've got to talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show today. And then what are we going to do with all of these excess vaccines that are just piling up that people are not using? And what about the Omicron hospitalization rates of Black and brown people in New York State? They were extremely high. Can't wait to talk to doctors Verholden and Knighton about that. But we're going to get some good news from Reverend Dr. Granger Browning out of Fort Washington, Maryland. So let's get to some of these headlines, everybody, so we can get this good news today, because I certainly do need it. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 39 degrees, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 37 degrees, cloudy. The Dow closed down 96 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 214 points. The S&P 500 closed down 23 points. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be playing the Thunder tonight, and they'll be playing the Trailblazers tomorrow. The Bulls, well, they fell to the Hawks. Yes, the Hawks 130, the Bulls 124, but perhaps they will be able to redeem themselves tonight against the Bucks. In the NHL, well, Chicago, they were triumphant over the Oilers, 4-2-3. Tomorrow they'll be playing the Flyers. And, well, the Wild had a great night, too, 5-4 over the Flyers. And guess what? They'll be playing the Sabres today. Well, it seems that Russia has been accused of a nuclear terror plot after a fire at a power plant in Ukraine. Russian troops have occupied Ukraine's largest nuclear power plant, where a fire that had threatened potential disaster was extinguished in the early hours of this morning, according to Ukraine's nuclear regulator. What do you think is going to happen, everybody? What do you think is going to happen? Are we on the verge of nuclear holocaust? Mr. Lavrov from Russia has said, the foreign minister who has been sanctioned by the United States has said, the next World War, the Third World War, will be a nuclear one. Wow. Kimberly Guilfoyle, Donald Trump Jr.'s fiancée, who worked on former President Trump's campaign, has been subpoenaed by the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. What will she say? A jury yesterday found Brett Hankinson not guilty of endangering Breonna Taylor's neighbors in a botched raid that left her dead. She was shot and killed by the police. The former Louisville Metro Police Department detective was the only officer charged in connection with the March 2020 shooting in which Breonna Taylor was killed. What happened, everybody? Who killed her? He did. And why is no one being held accountable? I had to talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show at 7 o'clock. In the meantime, I want you to continue to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT, 773-763-9278. Want to hear your thoughts today about everything. But Reverend Dr. Granger Browning, one of my spiritual fathers here, senior pastor at the Ebenezer AME Church in Fort Washington, Maryland, is bringing us some good news. Pastor Browning, it is just every day. I go to bed, I didn't expect to be looking at, we might be looking at nuclear holocaust. It's just crazy. And then the black people can't get out of Ukraine. They're being blocked from the trains. And that, thankfully, that's beginning to change, but it does show us some things. I need some good news. I don't know what to make. I can't make heads or tails of what. When I go to bed and wake up, it's like it's a different world every day.
So true. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show again. And I just appreciate you and your show for being a drumbeat for our community, lifting up issues and concerns and situations going on in the world that very few of us either are aware of, and you bring a unique perspective. And I thank the Lord not only for you, but for your entire family. The blessing of having been raised by your mother and father and having been able to be exposed to all the things you've been exposed to throughout your entire life gives you a unique perspective on the world and America. So, again, we just appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
This is the beginning of Lenten season, and because it has a primarily Catholic focus, traditionally persons think of it as sacrificing, and so the Catholics view Christ on the cross. It's called a crucifix because he's still there, and the focus is on the suffering Christ. While Protestants, our cross does not have him on the cross because we see the victory from the cross. And so today it's going to be very important during this Lenten season to try and figure out ways by which individuals can get victories in your life. And your show becomes very important because it keeps us informed of areas that we still need to be involved in. We're just coming out of a pandemic, and many of your listeners, I'm assuming, have been very concerned about it. They've been on the front lines as either healthcare workers, persons who've been involved in the community, feeding, clothing, making sure the elders were taken care of. They may have gotten coronavirus themselves or loved ones that had to take care of them. But it's been a challenging time to have loved ones sick. Santita, as your mother and father were both contracted on the same day, can't visit them. Loved ones dying in the hospital by themselves. I mean, it was a challenging time. I know at the church we had funerals, and you're talking about in the worst time of the pandemic, 10, 12, 15 persons had only come to the funerals. So your loved ones, you weren't even able to be there. And my point is, it takes a toll. And then right after we're starting to emerge from the pandemic, now we're on the verge of a world war. A nuclear power plant has been attacked, and there's alliances that the Russians have and alliances that America has, and both sides are building up their own alliances, and we don't know where this is going to happen and what's going to happen. And so I want persons to be aware of the fact that is a lot on you. Breonna Taylor, once again, the police of not being charged, and all the social injustice that's going on. And so it's important to be informed of all of these things. But I do caution people not to be too engrossed in it, because it does affect your mental and emotional and spiritual well-being. So be involved, be concerned, but don't be watching it 24/7. And this Lenten season can be about self-care. It can be about how we can follow the Bible that says, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. And whatever religion you may be a part of, virtually all of them have that principle of loving God, loving your neighbor. But don't forget to love yourself. And that sometimes because you're so committed to serving humanity, many of your listeners are doing all they can on the front lines of the pandemic, concerned about war and peace, concerned about taking care of your neighbor and those in your community. Some are caregivers, having taken care of family members and friends. But don't forget to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care, it's been hard to take care of not only your loved ones, but also to be as strong as you need to be during this time. And so part of it has to do with health. Your father has been he always talked about don't dig your grave with your teeth. And it's going to be important for me during the Lenten season. Before that, I would go I literally would go 40 days fasting. But one year the kids went to McDonald's while I was fasting, and those McDonald's fries, I could not get them out of my mind. And after the 40 days was over, I ate fries for about the next week, all the fried chicken that I had given up. So the point was I made a commitment to fast, but then after the fast, I went back to my unhealthy eating ways. And so as I've gotten older, it's no longer just about fasting, but about a healthy lifestyle. And so I'm dedicating myself to eating healthy now. Several years ago, stopped drinking sodas, stopped using as much sugar. I used to put 4 teaspoonfuls of brown sugar in a cup of tea. And so now cut that out. So I'm eating and then exercising. I'm making sure that exercising becomes a regular routine. So after the Lenten season is over, I have disciplined myself spiritually, spending dedicated time in prayer, fasting, reading the Bible, meditation. And so when the Lenten season is over, my life is better. It's not just a 46-day period of a committed life to Christ, but my life is better. And what I've started in those 40 days, I'm now extending prayerfully for the rest of the year. And so my word today prayerfully is that persons will love God, whoever God you serve. As Christians, obviously serve Christ, loving your neighbor, and making sure that the world, your state, nation is a better place. But don't forget to love yourself and making sure that you are the best person you can be, so that your love of your neighbor and love of the world, you're able to give of your time and talents to make it the world and community, the beloved community, as Dr. King called it, that it needs to be.
Reverend Dr. Granger Browning, I feel like Roberta Flack killing me softly with his song. This sermon was for me to tell today. And I thank you for that, because oftentimes we don't make our own list, and we've got to make our own list. We've got to make our own list. You can't do anything if you're not healthy. If you're not healthy, and we just plow on through, and that is not the thing to do. Trust me, that hit me this week. Full stop. And I have learned a big lesson. And as you get older, you just have to take care of yourself. You just do. You just do. That's your gift to God.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Granger Browning. And you all are going to be going back into in-person worship. But how can we access worship with you for those of us who are listening from all over the country?
We would be honored to have you join us on our website, EbenezerAME.org, EbenezerAME.org, and that will get you hooked up to the live stream that we have, but also EbenezerAME.org Facebook Live is also the other way by which you can get online with us as well. And as you're saying, the second week of March, there will be literally 2 weeks having been outside of the church in live worship. But we'll be starting once again for live worship on the second week of March, March 13th.
Well, and his wife is a praying somebody. She'll be with us next Friday. I'm so excited about that. Pastor Joanne, we love her, and we just love the ministry that you all have created together. And I thank you for being models
we
of.
love you.
Oh, love you.
Thank you. we love you, and your family have just impacted not only my wife and I and our family, but the world. There's no one that has been more instrumental in social justice and civil rights and making the world a better place for over a half a century, more so than your father. And I pray that persons begin to fully recognize the longevity of what it has taken to be on the forefront of the world for over half a century. So we love you and appreciate you and your family so much.
Love you and appreciate you, even though you went to the wrong HU, but I'm not going to say anything.
We talked about self-love.
Oh, Hampton, that's my grandmama's school. That's my aunt's school, but I'm a Howardite. That's all right. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Well, I went to Howard Divinity, so I got a little Howard in me as well.
You got enough, Howard. I'm loving it. It's okay. I'm loving it. Reverend Dr. Granger Browning, everybody, senior pastor at the Ebenezer AME Episcopal Church in Fort Washington, Maryland. You need to be a part of that service. You're going to love it. There's the greatest music, greatest preaching, and the greatest service. We just love you and thank you so much. We've got Dr. Deborah Furholden, one of your homies from Baltimore, just brilliant graduate of Johns Hopkins University. She's an epidemiologist who's the associate dean. Oh, yeah. You're going to have to get her to your church so that she can talk to us about public health. She is absolutely brilliant. And she's the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. Very, very young woman. And got to get this woman to your church, too. Dr. Shanina Knighton, who is the infection preventionist. Many of us don't even know what that is, but she is a research scholar, registered nurse at Case Western Reserve University. So, I ran a little over, and so we're going to run into the next segment for about 5 more minutes. But I want to start with you, Dr. Furholden. As the vaccine demand is falling, states have a huge stockpile now all over the country of vaccines. What will happen with these vaccines? What should happen with these vaccines? I mean, will they just expire? I mean, when so many people around the world don't even have access to them? I mean, what's going to happen?
Yeah, this is not the first time we've talked about this issue. And, this is near and dear to me because I've talked about us in this global health equity conversation and how I do not feel like we've been good stewards of resources. So we've had plenty of vaccine that has expired in this country. And unfortunately, that vaccine oftentimes goes to waste. It goes in the trash. And at the same time, we've got other parts of the world where they don't have access to vaccine, and there are people who want it and just simply cannot get it. So this is just bad global stewardship, in my opinion. And that is exactly what will happen. Those vaccines will expire and they'll be discarded.
That's it.
Or And honestly, there's one important step that also we really have to take on. And this next iteration and the next generation of vaccines, we've got to deal with these cold chain storage issues. It makes it less appealing and less of an option in certain parts of the world. They simply can't afford to or don't have the resources to maintain and store these vaccines the way they would need to in order to be able to, safely get them, to their people and get shots in arms. I'm sure you've been in different parts of the world. There's certain parts of the world where this is just not a feasible solution. But we should have been much more proactive about making sure we did everything to avoid waste. Literally when these first came out, people have to mix it up, right? It doesn't come in the vial ready to go. The J&J or the Moderna, they have to be mixed up. People were so cautious to not waste anything. Technically, we'd have a little bit more in vial than you actually needed. And people were using particular types of needles, very careful in the mixture, so they could squeak an extra 1 or 2 doses even out of a vial. So to go from that to now throwing away millions of doses, it's just something very, very wrong with that. Very, very wrong with that.
I mean, it's shocking if there's no plan for these vaccines to be outsourced to places in the world that want them. And then we won't share the formulae with countries in the world that are begging for them. I don't understand that, Dr. Deb. I don't understand that. I mean, that to me is just, that's unethical in a global pandemic. Am I wrong here?
Yeah, this thing, yeah. No, it needs global intervention now. I mean, this is capitalism. People say we got the formula. What I find especially troubling with this vaccine in particular is that our tax dollars, by and large, paid for all of it.
All of it. So why don't we have a say?
All of it. It's like we paid somebody to build a house for them to rent it back to us. I'm like,
that's why I told you, democracy, corporatocracy. The corporations are running the place. Dr. Dr. Knighton, excuse me. What do you make of this? I mean, because you are watching people who, what happens? I mean, what do you think? What should we do? What should we be doing moving forward? Because as we pivot into this to a short discussion about Black New Yorkers who were hospitalized at more than twice the rate of white New Yorkers during the recent Omicron wave. I mean, because we were told Omicron was very mild. You're still seeing a need for these shots that mitigate hospitalization, and they're saying that one of the that people just they're not. What is going on here? What's happening here? You know, how is it that we've got shots that are just dying on the vine, and we're not even trying to get them to people who want them and need them? Then you've got Cuba that wants to outsource their shots all over the world, and we want to push back on them. What is that? Dr. Knighton?
Is Dr. Knighton being brilliant on mute?
Maybe. I've got about a minute and a half.
No, absolutely. I was going to say, it's interesting because I still think that this goes into exactly what was discussed before in regards to people waiting too late to go in to be seen. Another thing of us not having insurance, and when I'm saying us, when we look at the rates of that in regards to who's likely to have insurance, who's likely to have primary care, who's likely to sit at home and nurse symptoms before they get bad, who's likely to be essential workers. And so when you think about all of these factors that we have, I would say working not in our favor, it's not okay. I mean, I've even seen it too, just even with relatives saying, well, I called and I told them that I wasn't feeling well and I can barely breathe, but they told me to stay home. So I ended up having a cousin that came home on oxygen after COVID for 6 months. And so it was her home without Buterol. And she was like, my heart is racing, but I'm scared if I stop taking it, I'm going to die. And so the fact that she had nobody to follow up with her in regards to care.
15.
So when I look at the hospitalizations, one of the things that I think about is how many of these are repeats.
10.
How many of these individuals were turned away after being seen the first time and had to go back when things
5.
absolutely got worse? So you look at things like that are happening, and you ask yourself, is the reason that the rates are high, is it truly attributable to just the fact that we're sicker, or is it attributed to the fact that the triage or the tree of care that typically, our white counterparts would get is not what we're getting when we're saying that we're ill?
Hold on.
Because we
Hold
may
that
have
thought.
a different way of expressing it.
Hold that thought. When you come back, I'm going to give you all 5 minutes into this next segment because I want you to talk about that, because this goes to the heart of Dr. Deborah Holden's fight and yours on equity, equal access to equal high quality health care. We don't all start at the same point. What's going on, everybody? Why are these Black and brown rates, but particularly with Black New Yorkers, why were they hospitalized more than twice the rate of white people? What happened? What happened? They're trying to say it's boosters, but they're saying there were a lot of other things before we get to the boosters. It might be the actual care that Black and brown people do not get. Back in just a minute. Thank you all so much. I'm so glad to be back with you, Dr. Deb. I got lectured by you, Dr. Knighton, and my physician about sleep. So I am.
Did you get some sleep last night?
Not a lot, but I did get some.
Oh,
I did. I actually
I
did.
like how I asked it, and there was a pause.
That's why I said,
Did
and you know
I
what?
get some sleep?
I know I was so hyped. I actually got up an hour early, and my body clock was off. Yeah, because I was afraid of
You
oversleeping.
got up with India. She
Mhm.
got up at about 3:40 this morning. I said, okay, here we go.
Oh, I mean, I was like
Here
ready
we go.
by 3:15. It's like, oh my
Wow.
gosh! I looked at my clock. I said, what? I thought, oh, that's what happened. I mean, I was just,
Yeah.
so I need to do a little bit of relaxing. I'm going to do that. I'm going to
What time did you? What
hmm
I was asking, how many hours of sleep did you get before the 3:15 a.m.? I think it's the other question.
about 3.5. But then I got 2.5 hours sleep earlier in the day. And then
Okay.
an hour
So
and a
you kind
half.
of break your sleep up.
Yeah. I mean, I just, took naps yesterday because I knew that I
Santita, I
needed
don't
to.
know the last time you done seen when was the last time you seen a REM of sleep, like a rapid eye movement cycle?
I do
Because
not
I was
know.
going to say, I don't think you, yeah, I don't
I
sound
don't
like
know. I don't know.
you cycling only
Christmas.
3 hours.
Christmas.
Yeah, that'll weigh your
Oh.
body down. And, like that's actually the one thing that you can't cheat. So, how somebody will like try to cheat a diet and all kinds of stuff? You cannot cheat sleep. Like sleep is the one thing that will always catch up with you.
Trust me, I heard this yesterday and the day before. And I said, okay. I said, sleep hygiene. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you,
Hassan Al
Shanina.
Tayyab is on the line.
So here we go. But let me speak to my guest who I'm going to be able to drop you for in 5 minutes. Mr. Oldtown, how are you?
Hey, good morning. How's it going?
How was your show last night? He's a brilliant musician in addition to being this brilliant activist. And just how was your show?
I appreciate that. We had a lot of fun. There's a lot of activists in the crowd, actually. A lot of music lovers and activists. So you got to love that. We played in Washington, D.C., the band's American Nomad.
Where were you playing?
And, we had a lot of fun.
Where'd you play?
12th Street Warehouse, near the Anthem on the wharf.
Yeah, I went to Howard. And so
amazing.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time in D.C. when I can. I love D.C. Love D.C. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. And as a singer, I've also worked in D.C. too. Love it. Love it.
Yeah,
love it. It's a great music town, right?
Oh,
back in 30.
Absolutely.
People don't realize that. They do not know. It's a great theatrical town. It's a great music town. But I take a minute with these ladies too. These are brilliant epidemiologists out of DC, out of Baltimore. Dr. Deborah Holden and Dr. Shanita Knighton out of Case Western Reserve in Cleveland. So stay right there.
You got it.
5.
The ladies will be out at 40.
Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, Hannah Parker, down there in South Carolina, my father's home state, and my brother Jesse, he was born down there too. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. We're going to be talking about Ukraine and Breonna Taylor. Want to get your thoughts about that. But what about this news? We always heard that Omicron wasn't that serious. Well, apparently the Black New Yorkers, that was not the case. Black New Yorkers were hospitalized at a rate more than twice that of white residents. And indeed, the report is saying that, okay, they were looking at a lot of different factors. They're trying to end it up with boosters, said Dr. Knighton. Before we get to boosters, there are many contributing factors, according to this New York Times article. Higher rates of underlying health conditions like diabetes and hypertension, varying exposure risk at work, all the stuff that you just said, multi-generational homes, lack of access to top tier hospitals. Wow. Then you got to get to boosters. Please, I interrupted you on the other side of the break because you were getting into that. You were like, wait a minute, before we get to boosters, when you look at Black people in particular, Black and brown people, working people, they don't get the same health care that people who are affluent and people who are white get in the United States of America. They just don't get it. Dr. Knighton?
So yes, and that's exactly it. And the other piece of it is, and we were able to see that even early on with, let's say, for example, the one physician that literally, without telling them that she was a physician off the back, ended up getting bad care and then ended up eventually dying. And that was because they wouldn't take her recommendations. And so I've experienced that. I'm sure all of us have, where we've actually communicated something and our information has kind of like failed to the wayside in regards to the recommendations that we may make about our care, as well as to even tell someone what we're feeling. There's times where, you may even be invalidated because you cannot quite describe or express what you're feeling in a manner in order for you to get the best care. And we know that, too, that a lot of times it comes down to health literacy. We also know that it comes down to the discrimination that's faced because there were more individuals that decided to be vaccinated than others. And so when you even look at that and the fact that, a healthcare provider could turn you away from care because you're not vaccinated, there's the ethical issue right there. People are already being turned away or being given subpar care because they had bad insurance. And so when we look at this makeup of things, including the fact that the narrative was shared that, Black people are disproportionately affected, Black people are the less likely to take the vaccine, without us looking at conservatives and comparing things equitably, it's almost like somebody painted the narratives before you would even go inside of a facility to be able to receive care. So when we look at those factors that go into it, it's sad, but it's not surprising to me, including the fact that a lot of environmental cleaning, just as I mentioned before, was rolled back. So you had all of these things that were being rolled back and they were not taking into account the people that it would have impacted. And that's what I'm concerned about even right now. If we continue to say, no masks, no environmental cleaning, it's like, okay, are you making sure that these individuals are also going to be protected because they're going to be putting themselves back at risk with individuals that are not caring anymore? And I've seen this happen. I've seen droplets come from people's mouths coughing. So I celebrated All-Star Weekend, and I'm talking about like literally droplets coming from their mouth, and I could visibly see them, and I'm just aggravated because it's like, this is exactly why masks work. People talking and then like literally spit flying. This is why masks work, right? So you look at all of these things, and it's like, I really do empathize because I don't think that they're taking into account essential workers.
At all. In these last couple of minutes, Dr. Verholden, Omicron was milder. That's what we saw. And yet Black people in New York suffered more. They were hospitalized at twice the rate of white patients. And we're seeing that there's a whole cascade of issues, right, that led to that before you can even get to the boosters. Like the booster, it's limited in how much it can help you if your other issues are not addressed. If you don't have access to a top tier hospital, my goodness. Dr. Verholden, in this last minute, what is our takeaway from this?
Well, I never liked this message with Omicron that, it's just mild and, and even Dr. Fauci, I was really disappointed. He sort of made these little flip comments like, just accept everybody's going to get this and, everybody just needs to accept that. And I was like, well, we don't just have to accept that. Because there's actually things that we can do that reduce the chances of people getting this. And so this notion that, it was mild, I know a lot of people who were hospitalized with Omicron. I know a lot of people, my friends, my peers, people my age, people that aren't, immunocompromised, sick, otherwise healthy. A good friend of mine in LA who's a runner did an 8-mile run on a Sunday. And by Wednesday, she called me and she said, I am afraid to go to sleep. I feel like I have a gorilla on my chest and a ball stuck in my throat at night. So we just unfortunately hit Black and brown people for many, many reasons. And yeah, it's true. We are overrepresented with some of the other kinds of conditions that put people at elevated risk for hospitalization, like being overweight. There's a whole relationship between adiposity and this virus and how it works and moves in the body. So and whatever, a lot of the factors that drive these things are structural in nature, but they have a very real impact on the life of the individual and on the life of the family. And so, I warn people, this is not the thing that you want to kind of play with and go, it'll be just like a cold, except for if it's not. That's what I told people, except for if you're one of the people for whom it's not. And you won't know until it's too late.
Everybody.
And even worse, you got the people who weeks later got long COVID, started showing symptoms of long COVID.
Please take care of yourselves, everybody. Please take care of yourselves. And let us now in 2022, as we are moving into this election season, we have to fight for health care equity. People, every human being deserves equal access to equal high quality care. There should be no such thing as a top tier hospital. Every hospital should be top tier and everyone should have access to it. Every medicine should be top tier and everyone should have access to it. That's it. And we should not stop until that happens. Doctors Deborah Holden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, and Shanina Knighton, Infection Preventionist, Registered Nurse, Research Scholar, Case Western Reserve University. We love having you with us every day. D. Ray and so many people are sending you and baby India much love today. Sending you much love.
Yeah.
I know you all have heard about this. Many of us have been, and we're going to talk about this more next week. We have been disturbed by the anti-Black racism that has been attacking many African migrants and people who've been living and working in Ukraine. They were not allowed to get on trains, and it's been very, very disturbing. But there is racism in other aspects of this story. That is to say, we have invasions that are happening all over the world, but we're not paying attention to them. I mean, let me go to Hassan El Tayyab, who is one of the Quakers. That's right. He's from the Friends Committee on National Legislation. He is their legislative director for Middle East Policy. And I just want to thank you and the Friends Committee for all that you all have done for human rights and civil rights down through the decades and through the centuries. Just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. You have said that there is racism, that the U.S. media is blatantly displaying racism by only covering wars that are between white people. Can you explain that?
Well, first off, good morning. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Good morning.
Yes, I think this is just so important to kind of understand. We have wall-to-wall coverage of this war in Ukraine. And there are so many wars where the U.S. is involved, pursuing aggression and violence against Black and brown people around the world. That needs to be covered too. War is hell, no matter where it is. We have watched, a whole week of horror in Ukraine, and that matters. But human life, wherever it is, matters. Whether it's in Ukraine or Yemen or Gaza or Iran or Russia or in America, all across Europe, all across Africa, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, as we've heard from Dr. Martin Luther King. And as the U.S. media is fixated on this crisis in Yemen, it's hard for me not to see real hypocrisy. We at FCNL, I'm not Quaker, by the way. I'm agnostic, proudly so, but I work with a lot of amazing Quakers. And we're working to end another conflict that's been going on for 7 years, and it doesn't get the attention it deserves. This is, the difference between this war in Ukraine and actually the war in Yemen that we're trying to end at FCNL is that in Yemen, we actually have an incredible amount of leverage as U.S. citizens to affect what's happening. That's the difference. It's a horrible crisis in both situations, but we are militarily supporting the Saudi-led coalition's war and blockade. We're giving them weapons. We're giving them military aid. And U.S. policy, in Yemen was already indefensible, but after the Ukraine crisis, it's even more. What the U.S. is doing in Yemen is essentially like supporting the Putin side, of the war in Yemen. And, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, the man who ordered the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, is the Putin of Yemen. And Biden's not just supporting it politically, like I said. He's actually participating in the assault.
How is this so, and how is this not receiving? When any coverage here, it's barely mentioned. It's barely mentioned, and yet, our lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives are really pushing to end the war in Yemen. I mean, they are really, really pushing, but it's been very hard for them to gain any traction because they can't get any media coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have some lawmakers that are wanting to take action on this. Biden came into office saying, okay, well, we're going to end support for the war. But if you look at the details here, that's where we're seeing that it's coming up way short. We've approved over $1 billion of weapons, and the military aid is continuing. We saw last month, Reps Pramila Jayapal and Peter DeFazio announced that they're going to introduce a new Yemen War Powers resolution. And this bill is designed, it's going to get a floor vote, probably going to get introduced at the end of March and receive a vote sometime in April. And this is a direly needed step to end ongoing American complicity in the worst humanitarian crisis in the world once and for all. And we haven't even talked about what's happening in Yemen as far as the humanitarian crisis. There are 16 million people on the, as a direct result of this U.S.-backed Saudi blockade. So as the world's looking at what's going on in Ukraine, it's a horrible humanitarian crisis, 1 million refugees. Imagine 7 years of that in Yemen. And we have something that we can do to end the conflict. So that's why we're trying to pivot people's attention. We think that, this is a moment that calls our congressional leaders to lead by the power of their example. We want to show the world that the world can exist with international law and a rules-based international order. But to do that, we have to get our own house in order. And we have to prove that Congress can support diplomacy in ending escalation. It seems like everybody in Washington, D.C. right now wants to just shovel more and more money at the Ukrainian people to pick up weapons as opposed to taking care of the refugees, providing humanitarian assistance. The ratio is way off, way more weapons in comparison to what the refugees are receiving. So, we have to send this powerful message to the world and not look like hypocrites on the world stage as we condemn, which are horrible actions. Russia is an imperial aggressor invading a sovereign country. That is wrong. That is uncalled for. That needs to be condemned outright. But we become way more powerful, arbiters and supporters of peace when we get our own house in order.
With Hassan El-Tayyab, who is the legislative director for Middle East Policy for the Friends Committee on National Legislation. And I want to talk with you just pivoting, but not just pivoting, but spreading the attention, right? And maybe it's because we're on different sides of the that it becomes problematic, Hassan. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I think that we need to talk about them all. I mean, as I've said, and we need to be moving toward peace, because you can't shoot your way out of a war, Hassan. You always have to negotiate your way out of it. I mean, you always have a summit. You have to. It's a legal agreement, right?
I mean, absolutely. We also have to be willing to be at the peace table in the first place. Do these direct talks. Seems like only the French president, Macron, is actually having those direct talks right now with the Russians. And that's to be applauded. We have to support diplomacy. You don't make peace with sometimes you make peace with your friends and allies, but you really have to make peace with your enemies here. And that is why diplomacy is just so important. And it's critical that we, not only, take a look at all of these different conflicts. I mean, I was remarking to a colleague that the Ukraine situation is being covered the way wars ought to be covered in the U.S. We should be giving it a lot of attention. But the problem is, it just doesn't seem like we're wanting to do that on these other conflicts that I mentioned around the world. The war in Afghanistan, war in Syria, war in Yemen. And there is a geopolitical dynamic going on here, too. So it's a lot of factors, made terrible mistakes with supporting NATO's expansion, closer and closer to the Russian border and that is having major consequences right now. That's not really being covered on the mainstream media. Some of the history that got us to this place. But again, we need to get our own house in order. And I think the best way members of Congress can do that is by right now working to end the 7-year onslaught by Saudi Arabia has pushed millions to the brink of famine. Millions of children, 2.3 million children right now are suffering from acute malnutrition. So we got a lot of work to do, and I'm very pleased that Rep. Jayapal and DeFazio are planning to move forward, and we need your help. We need your help to end this conflict. If people want to call their lawmakers, I know you're calling from Chicago. We need Senator Durbin to get behind this effort. We need Senator Duckworth to get behind this effort, and a whole bunch of members of Congress on the House side. If folks want to call 1-833-STOP-WAR, again, that's 1-833-STOP-WAR. That's a great call tool we've set up. And it'll get your voice heard to your members of Congress. It's a really quick thing. Say, hey, we stand with Ukraine. We stand with Yemen. It's time to end authority, no matter where it is.
Hassan El-Tayyab, Legislative Director for Middle East Policy for the National Legislation. I want to know, what do we not know about Yemen, about this conflict? What do we need to know? Because I think that most of us don't know anything about it. If you can give me in a couple of minutes, just kind of, it's hard to put it in a nutshell, but help us to understand how this happened and why it's so important. I mean, does Yemen have a lot of oil? I mean, because we typically don't fight over places that are not mineral rich or something like that.
Yeah, so Yemen's political instability, it's the poorest country in the Middle East. It's right below Saudi Arabia, so if you can kind of get your mind situated where this country is. Yemen's political instability began after the Arab Spring uprising that ousted their president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, who had been in power since 1990. And then Vice President Hadi actually became Yemen's interim president for what was supposed to be a 2-year term. In 2014, Yemeni frustration with rampant corruption pushed the Houthis to take over the capital. And then in 2015, with the stated goal of restoring Hadi to power, Saudi Arabia joined forces with the UAE and formed a coalition with the U.S., United Kingdom, France, Canada, and others. Were insistent that they beat back the Houthis. Now, this is a strategic spot for them because they want to build a pipeline through the eastern province of the country. There's the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and that's where millions of barrels of oil are transported every single day. So they are, they've chosen to take, rather than pursue diplomacy with the Houthis and try to de-escalate, they just basically did a whole onslaught of the country. They blockaded and proceeded to cut off the flow of food, fuel, medicine, and clean water. and have continued these devastating airstrikes, ripping apart Yemen's infrastructure. Now, the U.S., we've given them weapons, we've given them military aid in the form of logistical support, mid-air refueling that ended, but we had mid-air refueling going. We had, targeting assistance, intel sharing, and a whole bunch of, political support for this conflict to keep going. It's raged on and on. Congress has already voted to end this war in 2019. We passed the resolution that we're trying to pass now. So there's some hope there that members of Congress can stand up. Biden actually ran on ending U.S. support for the war, but just didn't follow through. And now it's time for us to make sure, get the people's house mobilized on this, the part of our government that's the most accountable to the people the most often. We got to get our members to pass this resolution and bring this devastating conflict to an end once and for all.
I've got a couple of minutes before we go. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Anything else you'd like for us to know?
Well, one, just my gratitude. I really appreciate you having me on. And, while the U.S. can't unilaterally bring about a ceasefire in Ukraine or in Yemen, we have to use our leverage where we can to try to end these conflicts. And, after a year of Biden's failed Yemen policy and repeated attempts by Congress to actually course correct, Congress, they can either turn a blind eye to this U.S. complicity or pass this Yemen War Powers resolution and finally end support for the Saudi-led coalition. They don't support us on Russia. They're authoritarians. They want to support the Putin side of the Ukraine conflict. And, we can't stand for that. We have to end our participation in that conflict and show the world that we support human rights and international law, and Congress can do its part to get these warring parties to sit back at the bargaining table and bring this war to an end. Folks should just call 1-833-STOP-WAR and be part of the conversation.
Hassan, you don't shoot your way out of war. At some point, they declare a ceasefire. And they say, okay, let's negotiate our way out of this. I don't want there to be the need for so many deaths before we get there. We've got to go another way, everybody. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Dr. King wrote that more than 50 years ago. We have got to work this out. I want to thank you, Hassan, for your work, and thank the Friends Committee for all the work, I repeat, that they have done through the years. And it is just the highest and best tribute to them that they embrace agnostics, atheists, whatever your belief system. If you want to work toward a better world, the Quakers will work with you. And I love that about them. And I love that about you. Keep on singing, my friend. I can't wait to see you perform when I come through Washington.
Anytime. Can't wait to hear you.
Oh boy, we're gonna have some fun. We'll have a jam session. It'll be great. Maybe we'll go to Tacoma Station. I don't know. I love it. Everybody, let's talk about Breonna Taylor. What happened? What happened? Why is no one to be blamed or to take responsibility for her killing?
5.
Why is it that the police officer who shot her said she didn't have to die? Okay, she didn't have to die, so why did she? Call me, text me, 773-763-9278, 773-763, WCPT. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor. Say her name, say her name, say her name. Back in just a moment, the Santita Jackson Show. Hassan?
Hey there.
Thank you so much. I cannot wait to have you back.
Yeah, anytime. I appreciate you having me on. I hope that was what you were looking for.
Oh, please. Absolutely. No, I mean, we're going to talk about it some more because I'm going to reach out to Jeff Cohen to have him on next week so we can talk about how uneven this coverage has been. And, because there are other conflicts. I think there's an opportunity here to resolve conflicts that have been ongoing. There is an opportunity and we need to seize it, but we need to first say it. Just say that there's a lot going on.
And, this is kind of disgusting. These people, Ukraine is a situation that we are now escalating. When foreign countries get involved in these conflicts like this, they just drag on and on and on. And I know people want to stand with Ukraine, but it's like
stand with them and call for peace. Stand with them and call for peace and demand it. Demand a negotiation. That's what you do. Demand the negotiation. That's it.
But the U.S., we have this zero-sum game, and we want to just see. We think Russia is an existential threat to the United States, and we're operating like this is a zero-sum game. Like China and Russia existing is a mortal threat to the United States, and it's just really short-sighted, and we can't see our own BS.
Oh, I think we see it. I don't think we care. Because there's so much money. Oh, thank you. There's so much money to be made in war, and we don't see the peace dividend, and the peace dividend is here. We need this money that we are spending on these wars. We need them to build our schools. We need them to build hospitals. We need them to rebuild the American infrastructure, which is more than 100 years old. We cannot afford this. And you have to sit down and demand, because Ukraine really is a functionary of our government. Absolutely. That's real. After the 2014 coup. But they know that. So it's just like, stop it. And now China and Russia have signed an agreement where they have no borders. Are you kidding me? Now this is China. Now China's telling us to get our nukes out of South Korea. This is spreading. This is not limited. And the American press is negligent in not telling people that during the Olympics.
I didn't hear about the South Korea.
Oh, well, I read all these international newspapers, because I know because I've lived overseas. So there's something else going on here, and America's only 4.5% of the world, and other people have a different narrative. Even the Time magazine in Germany, for example, is written from another perspective, y'all. I'm speaking to my Facebook Live audience. When you read Time magazine from Britain, Time magazine in Japan, it's written from another perspective, like theirs. So we have to understand that. The Economist in Japan, in the UK, is written from a perspective that is not ours. You go to Kenya. You just go all over the world. People have different takes.
Attorney Hoffler on the line.
Thank you so much. Who else do we have on the line?
Attorney Hoffler, Attorney Connolly, Attorney Griggs, and it looks like Dr. Browning and Hassan
they're still here?
is still on.
Oh, okay. Dr. Browning, I didn't know. Reverend Dr. Browning, you're still here?
Yes. Good morning. I'm just listening. That was all.
No. Would you like to participate with us as we talk about Breonna Taylor?
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't realize I was coming back on. I was just listening.
No. You're free to listen. But given you've got such a big voice, if you'd like to weigh in on Breonna Taylor at any point, feel free.
Thank you so much. I think I'll just listen. Thank you.
No. Well, we just had a whole lot to talk about. Hassan, you know what? I'm gonna pivot on to my next topic, but I will be speaking with you in the next few days. Okay.
You got it.
I
Take
will
care.
absolutely be doing that. Blessings to you. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you. Attorney Griggs, Attorney Connolly, how are you? And you know what? Let's talk after. If we could speak this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. I've been a little under the weather, and I've been trying to do some self-care this week, so I missed a lot. I'm just kind of getting caught up now. And Attorney Hoffler, how are you?
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
It's great hearing your voice. Okay, so let's get right to it, everybody. Okay. Okay, and I can hear something in the background, but we'll work that out. Let's see this. Okay, I hear a clicking. Okay. All right. Okay, here we go. Okay, Robert Williams and Dave Dowling and Joyce. Yeah, we'll do something musically in DC. Linda and oh my goodness, L. Stanley,
Back in a
Barbara
minute.
Bacon. Thank you so much. Robert Williams, D. Ray, Debbie, sending you all so much love. Laura and Abraham down there in Venezuela, sending you much love. Want to hear more of your thoughts, Abraham, because I really do appreciate your weighing in. Because we need to get on, we need to understand what life is like on the other side of American sanctions, what we do to other people who mean us no harm and who want to work with us, but because we don't want to work with them in the way that we want them to, we punish them. Not good. Twyla down there in Alabama, sending you much love. All right, stand by. Paula. Okay, I can hear something in the background. Hey, Robert Williams. All right, sweetie, stand by, everybody. Here we go.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Santita Jackson. I'm welcoming myself back. I'm so glad to be with you today. I've missed you all this week, and I'm so glad to be back feeling recharged and loving you, loving being here, loving life, and pledging to take better care of myself, and hope that you will do the same. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and meet my morning stars on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and the official Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. It's Santita Jackson and Friends. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor, everybody. Say her name, say her name. According to the legal system, no one is responsible for killing her. Now, the bullet was shot by somebody. Why are they not responsible for killing her? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. When the police officer who did kill her said that she did not have to die, Breonna Taylor's mother, understandably overwhelmed with grief, walked out of the courtroom. What is going on, everybody? I want to hear your thoughts. 763-9278. Let's get some of these headlines out the way so we can get on with this story. Chicago, a high of 39 degrees today. Mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 37 degrees, cloudy. The Dow closed down 96 points. The NASDAQ closed down 214 points. The S&P 500 closed down 23 points. In the NBA, the Timberwolves will be playing the Thunder tonight, and tomorrow they'll be facing off against the Trailblazers. But last night, well, our Bulls fell to the Hawks. The Hawks won 30, the Bulls won 24. The Bulls will be playing the Bucks tonight, hoping that they will come back. But in the NHL, where there was happier news, Chicago 4, the Oilers 3. Yay, they'll be playing the Flyers tonight. And the Wild 5 and the Flyers 4. The Wild will be playing the Sabres today. Everybody's looking at this potential nuclear accident that was barely averted, everybody. Russian troops have occupied Ukraine's largest nuclear power plant, where a fire that had threatened potential disaster was extinguished in the early hours of this morning, according to Ukraine's nuclear regulator. President Zelensky has urged European leaders to wake up now and stop Russian forces before this becomes a nuclear disaster. It's important to note that the building housing the actual power plant was not hit, but a building on the campus. But nonetheless, the fire threatened the whole campus. And so we're wondering what is going to happen. President Zelensky accused Russian troops of committing a terror attack by intentionally firing at the power plant, risking the lives of millions. The Capitol riot, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Donald Trump Jr.'s fiancée, who worked on former President Trump's campaign, has been subpoenaed by the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. This comes after Kimberly Guilfoyle refused to cooperate voluntarily with the committee's investigation. Breonna Taylor, a jury found yesterday that Brett Hankinson, former Louisville police officer, was not guilty of endangering Breonna Taylor's neighbors in a botched raid that left her dead. What do you think happened, everybody? Well, we know what happened, and we're going to go over it with Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Gerald Griggs and Attorney Aaron Connolly, and we want to know what your thoughts are. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, and let us know what you think. Since no one is responsible, where did the bullet come from? Yeah, I want to know. But in the meantime, I want to start off with talking about Team Hochberg. Team Hochberg, you know what? There is a path for you to own your own home. If you have good credit, if you need to if you have too much credit, if you need to refinance your home, there is a way for you to hold your home. There's a way for you to buy a home. There's a way for you to buy some of these rundown homes in your community and become an owner, to become someone who generates income for themselves. So I want you to call Team Hochberg and work out a financial plan. That's what they can do. The first call to them is at 855-56 David, 855-56-David, or call them at 56david.com, 56david.com. People who've had huge credit card debts, they've worked with them and the credit card companies to negotiate these credit card debts all the way down, and at the same time, they've been able to save enough money to place down payments on their own homes. Everybody, Tom and Sonia, for example, 2 kids, they constantly struggle to pay their and the minimum payments on their 17 credit cards. The balance is totaling, get this, $100,000. Can happen to anyone. So they call Team Hochberg for a free and their loan officer, Sarah Ruffer, Tom and Sonia secure an FHA loan, paid off their 17 credit cards, and reduced their monthly payments over $2,800. Before calling get any traction. Afterwards, they were able to pay off their 17 credit cards. They were able to secure an FHA loan, and they reduced their payments to over $2,800 a month, to less than $2,800 a month. So we want you to call them. Call them at 1-855-56-DAVID, 1-855-56-DAVID, or call them at 56david.com so that you can get out of debt, everybody. That is the name of this game. Everybody, what happened with Breonna Taylor? What happened with Breonna Taylor? Let's talk about that. Her mother walked out of the courtroom absolutely devastated because Brett Hankinson said, well, he was doing his duty, but she didn't have to die. So what happened that night? Indeed, protesters wanted him to be charged much more heavily. That did not happen. And you saw him crying on the stand. In the meantime, no one is being held responsible for the killing of Breonna Taylor, who was resting in her home, found not guilty on all charges stemming from the raid in which she was shot to death. So I want you to tell me, what do you think about this? 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. Let's talk about this, starting with you, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, and this magical panel who appears with you most Wednesdays, Attorney Gerald Griggs from the NAACP in Atlanta. Okay, set the table for us. March 2020.
Well, good morning, Santita, and to our panel and to your listeners. You know, this is a painful case to talk about. This is a painful case. And Santita, you started off by saying that no one is responsible. I disagree with that statement. I know you do too. The correct statement that I would say is no one is being held legally responsible for Breonna Taylor's murder. That's where things stand. No one is being held legally responsible. The officers that were charged, the officer who was on trial, who was found not guilty, he was found not guilty. And remember, there was no one charged or prosecuted as relates to the killing of Breonna Taylor. These charges were for reckless, for shooting into neighbors' homes. So that's why I say this is painful. The pain for me and for, I think, many throughout the country and throughout the world begins with the fact that no one has ever been held accountable for Breonna Taylor's murder. That's number one.
Well, hold on. Let me ask you this, because he said he absolutely did nothing wrong. Now, he shot 10 bullets, CK. But
well, defendants say a lot of things. Defendants say a lot of things, and what he's saying, he's defending himself and saying that he did absolutely nothing wrong. That's why her mother stood up and left, because for him, it's one thing for him to say that yes, Breonna Taylor didn't need to die, but it's another thing for a police officer who was in this chaotic, awful situation, who shot 10 bullets, to say, "I did absolutely nothing wrong." So. Santita, I have to really draw a distinction. The reason why he was on trial and the fact that no one has been prosecuted for the murder of Breonna Taylor, and no one, it appears, is going to be prosecuted. That's the sense of injustice that her family and many feel. You can prosecute someone for shooting recklessly and endangering others, but how about prosecuting someone for shooting and killing Breonna Taylor?
10 times.
Right. No, there were bullets. He fired 10 bullets.
Shot 10
there
bullets.
Were a lot more bullets. There were a lot more bullets that were fired. And Breonna Taylor. It was just massive chaos. But they are the ones that they had the duty. Now, let me just go one step further about how this case, why it's so painful, and why there's a sense of grave injustice. One, like I said, no one's been prosecuted for the murder of Breonna Taylor. Two, there were problems with the warrant. It came out in this trial. Somebody thought it was a no-knock warrant. It actually was not a no-walk warrant. The police did not comply with their own rules and regulations. That's number two. Number three, the defense is that their actions were reasonable under the circumstances. So this is what happened. They barged into the house. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend or ex-boyfriend thought that someone was violating their rights by barging into the house and shot his gun, fired, and then they fired back. And there was a series of bullets back and forth. It was just pandemonium. But they are the ones that breached that home. They are the ones, arguably, that did not respect even the terms of the warrant. So they executed. So there are many, many problems, legal problems, technical problems with the evidence in this case. However, this jury felt, and must have felt, that the testimony of Hankinson was compelling because he was held not guilty on all three counts.
On all counts.
On all counts. And there was a very, very short deliberation, 3 or 4 hours. So I just want to be clear, no one has been prosecuted for the murder of Breonna Taylor. This was for reckless endangerment, wanton endangerment, because some of the bullets went into that neighboring house. There was a woman who was pregnant, a 5-year-old child, and her significant other there. So that was the reason why this trial took place. And while there was a civil settlement in this case, there has been no accountability held for any of the 3 police officers who were involved in that shooting. Not a bit.
Well, see, I'm trying to find out. See, this neighbor testified that the gunshots were inches away, to quote them, from hitting me. Inches away. I mean, and I also want to know why. Okay, so was that discounted? Not to mention the fact that who's been indicted for shooting and killing this woman? This young lady.
No one.
How can we indictment on who shot her? Is it that so many people were shooting? And if that was the case, what happened?
Well, they took the position wrongfully that they thought that the shooter, her ex-boyfriend, had an AR-15. Remember, we've heard AR-15. Isn't that what Kyle Rittenhouse had?
No.
That he had an AR-15. There was no evidence of AR-15. No AR-15 was found, by the way. He did draw his gun. Just as many people know that they have a right to defend their home, have a right to defend where they are. Now, this was her home, but he was a guest in the home. So the question is, when someone invades your home, do you have the right to defend yourself? Well, the answer typically is yes. They're taking the position that they were responding to the deadly force that he used. What they're completely ignoring is what they did and the problems with the warrant and the like. So, it's a painful, devastating case with a devastating outcome. The devastation begins with the death, the murder of Breonna Taylor. That's number one. Second bit of devastation is that no one is being held accountable. Third bit of devastation is that even though the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department is being investigated, there are a lot of things that will happen on that level. None of that will in any way anyone's accountability for the death and the murder of Breonna Taylor. And that's the travesty. That's the miscarriage of justice in my impression. So at the end of the day, as long as a jury does not hear evidence related to Breonna Taylor's shooting, the excessive use of force there, the endangerment there, then we won't see justice. And it appears that that is not going to happen in Kentucky.
And Attorney Erin Connolly, what do you make of this?
Well, good morning, Santita, and good morning to this amazing panel. And thank you to Hoffler for that assessment of this heartbreaking case, right? And I think the thing that hits me first about it is you talk about her mother, and you see these beautiful pictures of this young woman who lost her life. She was sleeping in her home. And the thing I keep thinking is, who owed the duty of care to her? Where was she in consideration of this, right? Why are the police putting anyone's life, whether it's Breonna Taylor's, her partner, whether it's the neighbors or the child sleeping next door, whether it's the lives of the officers who created a situation that was essentially mayhem in this neighborhood, right? What were they looking for that was so important that they're willing to take these risks, right? That there are gaps in our system where our citizens are not safe in their beds in their own home with, the police own constitutional due process that they set for themselves. So this case is from a legal perspective, from a human perspective, and the slow reforms for this police department are another story entirely. But ultimately, thinking about this mother having to sit in court and listen to this ancillary justice that she's trying to get and still not receiving it, and her daughter is not alive, right? Like that is the heartbreak of this case. But there has to be some sort of justice. We cannot continue to operate in a society where we're funding police departments and then giving them, a complete blank check to do whatever they want. The reality is this police officer has been told over and over again that he didn't do anything wrong in this situation. And that's not okay. And that's when we say defund the police, when we say we need reform, that's what we're talking about. There needs to be accountability. In America, you should feel safe if you are in custody at a police department that you will not lose your life. You should feel safe in your own home, that you will be protected and not become a victim from those that have made an oath to serve and protect you in your community. Bottom line. I would love to hear the perspective about what's going to happen next and how we can help this family receive some sort of justice.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, well, since he said he did absolutely nothing wrong, Erin. I mean,
right. And he believes that. And the system reinforces that he needs to change. There needs to be a better analysis for this risk that these police departments are willing to take for what? They were looking for evidence of a weapon or some sort of drug evidence at one point, they stated as well. That is not worth the life of a human being.
Or the lives.
Period.
I mean, because other neighbors, the neighbors said, no, the bullets barely missed me. This is the middle of the night. This is like 2:30 in the morning. People are asleep, presumably.
Right.
But whatever they're doing at 2:30 is their business. They're at home. Attorney Gerald, what do you make of this? He says he did absolutely nothing wrong. She didn't need to die. Where does that leave us?
Yeah. Well, it leaves us thinking of two names. One, Daniel Cameron, and the other, Merrick Garland. And, sitting in a court parking lot about to go into court, cases like this really dishearten me with the system, because I see every day the system holds citizens accountable on far less evidence. But there seems to be some type of mental gymnastics that we have to go through to hold law enforcement accountable. CK said no charge for the murder of Breonna Taylor. She was clearly murdered in her home. And in Kentucky, you have the castle doctrine. You have the right to defend your home. And when you have such blatant issues with the warrant, it wasn't a no-knock warrant, so they had absolutely every right to defend their homes. And those officers violated Kentucky law. But the problem is that you have a prosecutor with his thumb on the scale who does not want to hold law enforcement accountable.
What do you mean?
What needs to happen now, Daniel Cameron will not charge these officers. So what needs to happen now is the Justice Department needs to file charges. It seems like this refrain continues to happen, that we continue to call upon the Justice Department and hope and pray that they will do the right thing. And I'm starting to lose a little hope because it's clear this was a violation of her constitutional rights. Now, yes, many members of the Justice Department like to have their 90% or 95% conviction rate, but the citizens want a trial where justice can come out. And we saw down in Brunswick that if you put the case up, you have a chance at winning. And so, you know, what I would like to see is real comprehensive reform. Real with this. I don't want to see the president get up on the State of the Union and say the solution is we fund police more. That's not working. Now, I'm not saying to defund, I'm saying reallocate. That's the proper term. Reallocate the funds to deal with the root issues. And we have to hold police officers accountable when they violate the public trust. This is not about us versus the police. This is about ensuring justice so that a woman who's asleep in her bed, not breaking any laws, is not murdered, and no one's held accountable for that. So we have a lot of work to do. It starts with this administration. It starts with this Justice Department. There are no more excuses that need to be made. You need to sign the executive order empowering the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which would ban no-knock warrants. We need to actually do something with the consent agreements they're going to come down against the Metro Police Department in Louisville, and we need to figure out how we address the reason why millions of Americans were in the streets in 2020. It was 3 cases: George Floyd,
1 minute,
Breonna Taylor, and then, of course, Rayshard Brooks. We've only addressed 2 of those cases, and all of the hundreds of cases that came after that. Last year was the most violent year for police violence since the Washington Post started keeping statistics. And the question is, why do we have to depend on the Washington Post to keep these statistics? That's another thing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would do.
30.
Have a database of all these police-involved encounters that turn deadly. So we have a lot of work to do, and the work starts with our government on the state and federal level who don't
15.
want to do this hard work to hold police accountable.
And I want to know what
10.
you think, everybody. Call me. Call us. Call us at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would address this very situation. What do you think should happen here? Because no one is being charged with killing this young woman. And this was someone who wanted to be a nurse. She was making a contribution to the world. Someone her baby sister looked up to. Someone who was beloved by her family. Someone whose boyfriend was trying to protect her. She was loved by people. There are a lot of broken hearts in Louisville today. What are we going to do about that? Think about that. There's a human element here. This was a human being. She was a human being. She is a human being. Say her name. Think about this. It could be you. It could be someone you love. Would you want the police to look at you and say, no one's responsible? Huh? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278. Back in just a minute. I mean, I'm not going to even say it because this is so infuriating to me. Because they just dismissed this girl as if her life didn't matter. She just doesn't matter.
What's crazy, Santita?
Oh, I'm here.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The protesters have spent more time in jail than the police officers that murdered Breonna Taylor.
Yep.
And so that's the true shame here. And my heart goes out to her family. My heart goes out to all of the activists. My heart goes out to all of the organizers that worked on this case and continue to work on this case. But, I just have to say this. The people that are doing the work in the social justice space need to call out these corporations.
Yes.
All 2020, they started talking about racial justice and how we're going to fix the system. And they painted names on basketball courts and they painted names on football fields, but Breonna Taylor still doesn't have justice. So we need to start calling on our allies, the ones that made all these grand promises that they were going to assist in this situation, because
Ms. Wells is on the line.
They carry this all on their backs, and they're trying to support these families. But, being someone that's been on the ground in Louisville 3 times and seen the work at the ground level, they need support. They need all of the funding that was poured into all these other nonprofits that don't do this work, poured into them so that they can fix the issue that's happening right now.
I'm with you on that. I mean, because this is... And just the lies that were told. I mean, this goes back to what happened with Fred Hampton. They said that Fred Hampton and Mark Clark engaged in a shootout with the Chicago police. They blamed them. It was only when Attorney G. Flint Taylor went in to that apartment that he saw, oh my goodness, all of the bullets were shot from the street by the police. And this was reported by the media. My father's people went out looking for Bobby Rush, who's now the congressman who's about to retire, because he was then the most wanted man in America when the FBI had these most wanted posters. Oh, yeah. Because they were looking for him because he had left the apartment he had just left to go get some milk. And these people, and they lied, and the media perpetuated the lie. They lied. And then Bobby Rush had to surrender, get this, Gerald and Aaron, I've told you this before, in my parents' apartment. I was there. Then they had to roll him in the back of a car and drive him across town to our Saturday morning meeting where you had about 3,000 people so he could surrender to the police on stage. Reverend said, hey, he has no broken bones, no bruises, no cuts. Now, the same way we're delivering him to you today is the way we expect to get him back. Just all these lies. And that's what I see. I've grown up with this. We be tired. And you ought to be tired of it before something happens to someone you love. That's my point, too.
10.
Well, Santita,
No, we're about to come up, but I want you. I'd say.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's too late. Save the children we can. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We're saying her name today. Breonna Taylor. What happened? We know all these police walked into her, shot into her apartment and killed her. And no one has been indicted in her killing. No one's being held responsible. So I guess the bullet just flew from somebody's gun and the bullets just hit her and nobody did anything. So everything's okay. No. Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. More comments from Attorney Gerald Griggs, because you made a point about who's jail time regarding protesting this, as opposed to those who shot this girl. But stay right there. Stay right there. Let me go to the Copeland Memorial Foundation is about to have a big gala, tomorrow, and we're very excited about that. Chappelle Wells, and we're going to get your comments, of course, about Breonna Taylor just after you finish here. But Yolanda Tolson said, Chappelle, she wants to know, how do we donate a ticket to someone in need for your event? Yolanda, that's so sweet of you. Sweet of you.
Santita, and thank you so much for having me on again. Yolanda, you can actually go to www.copelandmemorial.com. You can also purchase tickets on eventbrite.com. The keyword is Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation, as well as also you can send it Zelle at ccmemorialfoundation@gmail.com. We are asking everyone to definitely donate to our great cause, which is keeping the memory of Courtney Copeland alive. And, Santita, I'm going to try to keep it together, because today at 2 a.m. in the morning, 6 years ago today, I got the news that my son was killed. But that wasn't the only tragedy of what happened to Courtney. It's what we subsequently found out about how he died. And I take people back because I want people to understand that what happened to Courtney happens far more often than we even get the awareness of. My son pulled up to the 25th District in Chicago, flagged down Officer Block, told Officer Block, I've been shot. Officer Block told him, your car is still running. Go put your car in park. My son runs back, put his car in park. He goes back to Officer Block, grabs his arm and said, I've been shot. Officer Block calls for the ambulance, and they let my son bleed out for over 13 minutes on the ground until he was in critical condition. Not only did they let him bleed on the ground for 13 minutes without assistance, they handcuffed my son as he was dying. They treated my son like he was a victim. Like a suspect as opposed to a victim. And the sadness of all of this, no one has been held accountable. They told my son, they labeled him as violent, agitated, combative, things that the video shows did not exist. The video shows that my son was begging for his life, begging the police to help save him. And they let him die. On the video, they let my son die. So when I hear the cases like Breonna Taylor, and I hear the lack of accountability, something has to change. Because mothers like me, Santita, we have to wake up every day knowing that our child is gone. And this is not something that's easy to bear. We have to go on every day. I read a poem that stated, the hardest thing that I had to learn was that my child had died. And the hardest thing that I continue to hear every day is that he is gone and never coming back. And so we have to all unite. I'm asking everyone, I know your child may not be where my child is, but you have to make the world feel that my child is your child. The sense of urgency that we all must have at this point. Like I remember sitting on the TV saying how many more children have to die. And I'm still making that plea today, Santita, because of the simple fact that we're still being killed and murdered and slaughtered in these streets every day. We're over here fighting a battle in Russia and Ukraine, and we're not even fighting a battle at home. And all of our children are constantly dying, and no one cares. They tried to justify what they did to my son, but for 2 years, the City of Chicago Office of Investigation investigated Courtney's case, and they came back with a preponderance of the evidence that they didn't handcuff my son, and they treated him poorly. The City of Chicago came back and said, we disagree with their own Inspector General. These are the type of things that we are fighting against. And we need help. We need all of these lawyers who are well-versed to take these cases, not only to the Department of Justice, but to the UN, because somebody has to hear our cries, Santeeta. Somebody has to hear our pleas. You know, we cannot continue to allow this to go on year after year. For 400 years that Black people have been here, we have been on these streets and nobody gives a damn. And we have to end this, Santita. I'm sorry.
I need you to stay there. I just need you to stay there. CK, Aaron, and Gerald, you know, I said there's a human element here. And when I think of Breonna Taylor's mother, they get storming out of the courtroom. She got out of there as quickly as she could. She didn't storm out. When this officer says that she didn't have to die that night, and that he did absolutely everything right, I just don't understand the humanity, CK. Yeah, I just don't understand it.
Well, you know, Santeeta, first of all, to Pearl, you know, Courtney is my son. My son is Courtney. My sons are Courtney. That's number one. Courtney is my son. Your child is my son, and my sons are Courtney. I do get it. I do know, as a mother of two Black boys, that it could be my child. That's why I get up every day and do the things that I do and challenge myself to do more, because Courtney is my son and my sons are Courtney. So there is no sense that we can make out of this, but what we can do is continue on all fronts to push for reform. That's why, you know, when we look at what the president says, the president can say whatever he wants to say. It's the action, to me, that counts. The action. Executive orders that can make a difference. If we don't have federal legislation because we have senators that are acting irresponsibly, reprehensibly, well, there's federal action that can be taken through the executive. That's number one. Number two, the accountability, the lack of accountability in Breonna Taylor's case, and Pearl, in your son's case, lack of accountability is something that we see every day. And that's why these executive orders are important, because the president put in to executive order accountability, and that will be important until such time as we have federal legislation. So George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, it doesn't matter what it's called, it needs to happen. Because other than that, if that doesn't happen, then this is going to continue. And the more that some police feel outraged by what's happening because they feel like they're under attack, the greater the consequences will be on the people, because they're going to take it out on the citizens because they feel like they're under attack. And let's be really clear. They have the power to legitimately kill someone, and then it'll be investigated later, and they can determine if it was excessive use of force or not. And as we've seen in so many cases, the determination oftentimes, just like the officer said on the stand, is that they did absolutely nothing wrong, because they are the judge, jury, and executioner. So
honored to thank you for keeping your son's memory alive. I'm about to go wake up my son for school. And as a mom, as an auntie to beautiful babies across this country, you know, that's what I felt. And thank you for sharing that deep grief with us. I think that human side of it is so often not felt fully. And I thank you for your bravery in that. And the reality is, you know, I want to take some accountability in myself. So, Chaparral, I appreciate that. As a lawyer and activist, this is not an area where I probably have put my full effort in. And I think I can do better. And I can call on my community to do better. And it's difficult, you know, as you know, doing this deep work, that there's a toll that it takes as well. But I think that needs to motivate us to do more and move forward. So thank you for that accountability. And we can do more, and we can call on the Justice Department to try these cases and provide some federal national leadership where people want to see movement, right? This is not something that can continue. And ultimately what I think police officers should, you know, and people that are supporting police officers should understand, these reforms will actually protect officers. If you really support officers, you would be advocating for more of this funding that they already have to go to things like counseling, mental health assessments, making sure that the officers in the field are competent and making good decisions, rational choices that are not putting lives at risk, right? Because these people are also traumatized, having to go through traumas and not fully processing them. There has not been enough resources. You look at suicide rates in police departments right now are astronomical in the city of Chicago, right? Because these systems exist that are not functioning to protect our citizens or the officers.
And wait a minute,
These
Aaron,
reforms and accountability
everywhere.
ultimately will serve everyone.
But Aaron, not just in Chicago, everywhere.
Everywhere.
Police officers struggle with domestic violence, with suicide, with drug. You have a really troubled group of people. Everyone's not a drug addict. Everyone is not engaging in domestic violence, but they over-index.
No.
They over-index.
And also, a lot of these folks are veterans or have served in some capacity and haven't gotten the proper services after that traumatic experience through Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm part of a military family, and supporting our family in that, we hear these stories from families who have those domestic violence struggles because a lot of these folks already are coming back with PTSD. They're experienced with weapons. They go into police departments to continue to serve and have not healed those wounds. So ultimately, we need reforms on all levels, but we need to keep our citizens safe. Breonna Taylor should be alive. She was sleeping in her bed in her own home, and someone needs to be held accountable for that. Period.
Somebody needs to be held accountable. Somebody needs to say something. Something needs to be done, CK. I mean, because you can hear the human cost. We always hear Chaparral, sweetie, you still there?
Yes, I'm here, Santita.
Okay. We hear Chaparral's fire and we hear her pushing and we laugh and joke with her. Underneath all of that is a lot of pain. A lot of pain. A lot of pain. And she uses her pain to empower herself, to empower her family, to empower you. And we've got to make the change that we say that we want. You can't just sit back and wait for someone to do it. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, we need that right now. We need it. CK, what would the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act do, particularly in a case or in cases like these?
Well, one of the things that it would, and the whole question of a no-knock warrant, this warrant in the Breonna Taylor's case was not supposed to be a no-knock warrant anyway. As I said, there were problems with the warrants. But the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would eliminate no-knock warrants, would also have a register. And this was the version that many of us were seeking to be passed. You know, at the end, there was a problem with reconciliation, but with the terminology and all that. But qualified immunity, it would enable us to hold police officers accountable for their actions if it were passed, a register so that we would know the bad police officers out there, their background, their histories, for those who have engaged in excessive use of force. There's so many things. It would eliminate racial bias. I mean, the George Floyd Death and Policing Act was initially designed in part to eliminate the destructive racial bias and the racial profiling that exists in many police departments. So, it's a comprehensive document. I just pointed to a few of the things that it would do, but it would make policing in America much safer, much better for the police, and most importantly, for the citizens.
But let me ask you this:
they are there to protect citizens.
But do you think police understand that? I mean, because the thing is, you can either be feared or loved. Okay, that's it. And you don't want to be feared. You really don't, because when people fear you, they also are a step away from hurting you. That's just the way that works. When you respect and admire the police force, you protect them and they protect you. I mean, it's a win-win.
Well, Santita, I think the irony is, the police unions, who are the biggest impediment to really the passage of, in my impression, to the passage of the George Floyd Death and Policing Act or any comprehensive police reform. I think that they are trying to, or acting like they're trying to protect the police, but I think they are being destructive. In these cases that we see, it is the police unions that are supporting and are perpetuating the misinformation and the lies that we see coming out in court. And they are the ones that are many times that are fueling or funding defense. Now, everybody has right to a defense. Everybody's entitled to a defense. But I think the police unions are not playing a constructive role. So when you ask, do I think that the police officers I think in part some do and some don't. Because if they believe the police unions and what a lot of the police unions are telling them, the George Floyd Death and Policing Act is a pariah, is the devil, is evil, is something that will be destructive for the police. So I think there is a problem with the communication on what it does, what it doesn't do. But fundamentally, I think it's the politicians in the Senate, the conservative senators, the Tim Scotts of the world, who are the impediment because they are negotiating on behalf of these conservative interests, and they are not operating, in my impression, in good faith. They're saying one thing and doing another, and that's dangerous, and that's what's happening. And so there is no reconciliation. I mean, Senator Cory Booker and so many others worked tirelessly as advocates, but at the end of the day, they were not prepared to sign off on a George Floyd Death and Policing Act that had no teeth, that didn't hold the police accountable, that didn't have the key provisions that they felt, that we all feel are necessary for there to be real policing reform. So unless that happens, it's just not going to be passed. I mean, you can pass something that has no teeth in it and that doesn't change the dynamics, but that's not going to help anyone. That's going to further frustrate the cause, because then we're going to have a continuation of mothers like Pearl who are sitting and talking and there's nothing being done. When you pass something that's supposed to cure or help a situation and it makes it worse, you feel worse. So that's where we are. So it's a bad situation, but we have to keep on pushing because there's no reason why it shouldn't be passed.
And there's no reason we shouldn't be pushing. There's no reason that we shouldn't be pushing. We shouldn't be pushing. So, Chaparral, got a couple of minutes here. Well, let me give you a minute, Aaron, and then I'll let Chaparral close us out because everyone should be getting to this event tomorrow night. What else would you like to say, Aaron? Because I know you're feeling this as a mom and first, as you are going to wake up and see that sweet baby John.
Yeah, you may hear him as I close out. But I did make a donation to the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation, and it was a very easy process. I encourage everybody to do the same. And we need to treat our children better as children and as grown-ups. They should be able to come to those, whether they're doctors or police officers or other people who are pledging to serve and protect us, elected officials, those systems and structures need to be safe for our citizens. They should be a place of refuge and sanctuary and trust and not a place of danger. I should not be afraid to call the police if I have an intruder for fear that I might be mistaken and, put my son in a dangerous situation. That's the reality of some places in America, that you are fearful. We can do better, but we all need to join together and make sure that it's not, that we're supporting families like Chaparral's family in this process, and that we continue to advocate. So thank you to all on the call who do that on a daily basis and are going into court today to continue that fight.
Chaparral, I've got 1 minute, literally. How can we be supportive of you and this beautiful gala that you are working on for tomorrow night?
Yes, Santita. Everyone can go to www.copelandmemorial.com to make a contribution, as well as also Zelle at ccmemorialfoundation@gmail.com, as well as also go to eventbrite.com, keyword Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation. And I wanted to say to the listening audience, thank you so much for your support. And I often tell myself one of Oprah Winfrey's quotes: breathe, let go, and remind yourself that this very moment is the only
15.
thing you know for sure. And so I'm going to breathe today and remind myself that
10.
the moment that I have today is very special in
5.
my son, and to showing more love to my family and my friends. And I'm going to also listen to you sing for me, Santita. I recorded you at my son's funeral when you sang the troubles of the world. So I'm gonna remember you today, and I ask that y'all remember me and my family as we cope with this very, very difficult day. Thank you so much.
We love you, Chaparral. We love you, Chaparral. Our love to Breonna Taylor's family. Our love to everybody. Really. We can change the world. We can make the world what it's really supposed to be, everybody. We can do that. We have the power. So let's do that. Please go reach out to the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation. Go to Eventbrite and call Chaparral at 708-526-4546 and make a contribution. It's going to help a lot of parents who are dealing with this pain and who want to turn their pain into power. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you on Sunday on Keep Hope Alive and on Monday, God willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you. Chaparral,
Yes, I'm here, Santita.
you okay? I don't like to let you go before I get some of these tears dry up.
I know. And I love you for it. I love you tremendously.
Well, I love you too. But I want to, when people start crying on my phone line, I got to stop. I got to make sure people stop crying. I had to make sure Erin stopped crying before the show. Bless her heart. She started crying. I heard her. I said, Lord, have mercy. We're about to have a river of tears up in here. But it's a lot. It's a lot. But you just know. And your son's life has impacted so many lives in so many miraculous ways. So many miraculous ways. Just know this beyond what you know for sure. Know that you know this for sure, that God is real and God is present and God cares. Know that.
Amen.
God
Amen.
cares. God cares. God cares. God cares for you. It's a song that we don't really sing anymore. God cares. God cares for you. Whether black or white, we're all precious in His sight. God cares. God cares for you. If religion were a thing that money could buy, the whole world in His hands, the rich would live and the poor would die. The whole world is in God's hands. Keep yourself in God's hands, Chaparral. I cannot imagine this pain that you're feeling today, but I know that Courtney is not far away. He's but a step away, and he wants you to continue to fight, to continue to fight. And I just want you to take care of yourself. You engage in some self-care yourself, because that's very, very important. Okay?
Yes, ma'am, I will. I definitely will take some time today just to meditate on, Courtney has fulfilled my life in ways that I couldn't even imagine. He was definitely my saving grace, and he still is. And I know that he is with God, and that's what comforts me and keeps me going each day. And my desire is to be with him. And so that's why I always have to make sure I'm kind, make sure I'm doing the right godly things so that I can also inherit the kingdom of life. So I continue to push forward, even through all this great pain and tragedy. But I know that God will always be there for me. Always. And he is my strength.
What are you doing to take care of yourself? Are you talking to anyone important? Some people are listening now who are dealing with this kind of pain or who are dealing with pain in their lives. And many of us walk around and we're just bleeding to death, just limping around. Have you gotten counseling? Do you feel that people should get counseling?
Oh, absolutely, Santita. I see a great therapist. She's an African-American therapist. Her name is Chantel Bidding, and I can call her at a drop of a dime, and she'll pick up the phone. I also have a family as well at church. My pastor, I can talk to them. So I tell everyone this is an easy road to follow, but there is help for you, and that's why we're starting with the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation Lotus program to help mothers to navigate this new normal, Santita, that we're actually adjusting our lives to the life after, because after everyone leaves, after everyone, everyone is there calling you 24 hours a day, but then there is sheer silence, and then there are times when people who haven't experienced what you've gone through don't know what to say. Your closest, you lose friends, you lose family. After you have been devastated to tragedy, and that's because people don't know how to help you or to comfort you. And I tell people who may have someone who experienced it, just pray for me. Just call me. Send me a text. Say I'm thinking of you. Those moments when I have those struggles, just like you do it often. Are you okay, Shapiro? I know this is a tough day. I know. Just see something. And some people just come and sit with me and don't say nothing. And I still feel their love. And so whatever resources, whether it be a professional, spiritual, a best friend, write a letter, a card, whatever it is that you can do for someone who's going through this, do it. It only takes a second. And you will never know someone's life. I have intervened with so many mothers who are on the brink of suicide just by telling them, hold on, sis, hold on.
Let me ask you this. What about fathers? Because you are a married woman and your son, your husband is without a son today.
Yes. And, oftentimes, Santita, we forget about the fathers. We forget about, like, Ahmaud, Marcus Arbery. We forget about Brent Wells. We forget about Trayvon's father. I forgot his name. And we don't pay attention to them. What I noticed in my own home is that my husband grieves in silence. He swallows his tears a lot to put forth this protection for me and my daughters and this strong manhood. But there are moments when I have to console him. There are moments when I have to tell him it's okay to cry. but he suffers a lot in silence, and a lot of men suffer a lot in silence because, you know, they feel just like moms feel. You know, anytime that you have a child and they're killed in gun violence or by the hands of the police or what have you, your first thought is that I wasn't there for my child. I couldn't save my child. That is what we're all feeling. That we, you know, we raise them, we do everything we can, and yet they're still gone. And so we have that guilt of thinking that we could have done something to stop this. And so for men and for women, and, you know, a lot of marriages don't survive the loss of a child. But what we've done is we've taken, you know, this spiritual walk together. Because only God has kept us together, Santita. Only God has given us strength. Only God has given me strength to get up today, this moment, to be able to talk about what happened to my child. And so I tell people all the time to hold on to God's unchanging hand. I said, when men fail you, God would always remain steadfast and on time.
Well, you know, I pray for you, and I pray for your husband. I pray for your daughters. I thank God for Justice, your grandbaby, who's been what a balm he has been in your lives. But I wanted to continue to lift up your husband because these fathers suffer in silence, and they are not acknowledged. We look at Ahmaud Arbery's mother, and you should, but it was his who drove for hours and hours and drove to the place where he saw his son's blood on the ground. It was still wet. No one talks about his father, who doggedly pursued justice for his son. And we have families here. It was illegal for Black people to marry for hundreds of years. And yet we have wanted to be together. And so I pay special way to your husband, Shapiro, and to both of you for being able to stick it out. And you only did that with God. And I thank God that you both had the sense to hold on to God's unchanging hand, stay together, and bond your family and to grow your family. Because Courtney's still here, and now you have Justice. And I'm just praying for you and just thanking God for you. But please give Brent my love. And I just remember seeing him at the service, and I just saw him trying to hold the whole family up. Oh my gosh. Whew. And my heart just broke for everybody. I just said, whew, wow. I thought of Jonathan in the back of the police car. And his friend kept saying, you know, you can't, it's Jesse Jackson's son. Jonathan said, no, don't say a word. Don't say a word. My brother was opening up businesses. He was opening up a series of stores, phone stores, and they were checking them out just before opening day. And his MBA and his degrees and pedigree did not keep him from being slammed on the back of that police car and put in the back. And Jonathan said, when they put you in the back of that car, you are clear that you might not get out. And that's his activism. And thank God for that. But he didn't have to come out. And there's that. So many of us don't. But something good came out of this, Shapiro, and we're just going to continue to fight and continue to work together. I love you, my dear sister.
I love you more. I love you more.
Impossible. I just want you to go get you a little bit of rest, okay? Sometimes you just need to cry, Shapiro. Sometimes you just need to do that.
I will.
Just go on and do that.
I will.
It's okay to cry.
Santita, I'm still on too.
Oh yes. Hey.
I've just been on mute, listening and praying. But Shapiro, prayers are with you. And, you know, hopefully I'll be in Chicago soon and get a chance to fellowship with you.
Thank you so much, Attorney Hoffler. I appreciate it. And I promise when you come back, I have some food for you.
Absolutely. And I sent you a little text, private text. So, read it, but we don't need to discuss it. Just continue to do the things I'm doing.
Bless your heart.
Thank you so much.
And yes, she does want her. She doesn't eat pork, unlike me. I do eat the pig. Do you eat chicken, fish?
I eat fish. I eat turkey, but I eat every side that Cheryl prepares. I've already looked at the list. Every single side. Not some, maybe not the every side. Yeah.
Oh my goodness
Every
gracious!
dessert. Well, every dessert. Not some of it. Every single dessert.
Every dessert.
I don't want there to be any confusion.
Every dessert. Well, me too. Girl, I eat it all.
Well, I just didn't want there to be any confusion or hold back because I don't eat pork or beef, and chicken, which is major because I love pork, beef, and chicken.
That's
okay. Love. But I just, but I do want you all to know that I will not hold back. But I am going to have to run, Santita and Chaparral, so I will continue and remain in prayer and until we meet again, which will be soon.
I love both my sisters. I love you, Chaparral. I love you, love you, love you, love you. And is Aaron still there? Has to get these babies up and on to school, but she, in the middle of everything, went and bought a ticket. So for your event, and we love Aaron, but it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful group of I love all of you, and I love you, Chaparral. I love you, Chaparral. Pushing me back in the radio, making me crazy, but she's still my girl. Ooh, okay. Okay. But I love you, sweetie. So let's talk, okay?
Yes, we'll talk later on this afternoon, Santita.
Absolutely. I'm actually going to go take a little nap now. So.
Okay. I'm going to go to work.
Oh, all right, sweetie.
All right, love you.
I love you. Thank you, Paul, for a great show. Everybody have a great one. I'll see you on Sunday on Keep Hope Alive. Love you.